Hello, this is Graham from letslearnthis.com. In this lesson we're going to have a look at functions within Python. Okay, so we're going to start with our game from the last couple of tutorials, and we're going to put a little function in here that prints out the player's score as the game continues, and it'll also print it out at the end. Okay, so to do this, first we're going to need a somewhere to put our score, a variable to hold our score. So we're going to type in here score equals 0. So that's going to be the variable that holds the player score, and we're initializing it with a value of 0. Okay, so what we're probably going to want to pass to this is the player's name and the player's score, and then get it to print out on the screen the current score. So we're going to use a function to do that. A function is simply something that can be used within a program again and again, a piece of code that can be used multiple times. So if you're doing a similar thing over and over again in your program, it might be quicker to write a little function that does that piece of code for you. Okay, so let's see how it works. The first thing we're going to need to type is def. And that tells Python that this is the start of a function here, and we're going to call it print score. Okay, so that's the name of the function there, and then we're going to have an open and close bracket. Now within these brackets we can pass values into the function that it can work with. Don't worry if that sounds confusing, because it will make sense as you see it work. And we're going to want to pass the player name. Let's call it P name, and also the player score, we'll call that P score. And notice here we've separated them with a comma, so the function knows to accept two parameters. Okay, and at the end we just use a colon like we did with our if statement, if you remember, and our loops. So what do we want this function to do? Well, we want it to print. Actually, what we'll do here, we'll put in a new line. We'll get it to print a new line first, because we haven't covered the new line character within a string. And that's simply \n. Okay, and to that we're going to add the player's name, and then we're going to so if my name for example would be Graham, but we want to say Graham's score. And here I'm going to put in something else to show you another good use of a function. So we could put sponsored by, I don't know, random watches. And then we're going to add to that the player's score. Add to that the player's score, but remember that this player's score is going to be a number, so it's going to be an integer number, so we're going to need to convert it to a string using the str function. Okay, and then on the end of that, let's add another new line so you can see it working. Okay, and then at the end we type return. So it returns us back to the program. Okay, so what's going on here? We're printing a new line, then we're printing the player's name, then we're printing the score, in this case sponsored by random watches, and then we're printing another new line. Then we're going back to the program and carrying on. So let's increment the score when the player gets an answer right. So where's that? That's in here. Well done, you got it right. And we're going to say score plus equals 1. So that's telling Python to add 1 to the value of score. Okay. Then we want to print the score out on screen. So we need to call our function here. So as we go around the loop, we could see if the game is in play here, and we could perhaps put it there. Let's put it before this line and put it here. So let's say print score, and then we need to pass the player's name. Well, we already know that because we've got it in this variable here because the user entered it. Okay, so I'm going to say player name, and then we need to pass the score, which we've been putting in this variable called score. Okay, and then we close the brackets. So what's going to happen when it gets to this line of code, it's going to jump to this function, and we've passed it the player name and the score, so they come in through these holes here. If you imagine them, imagine these brackets as being a pipe, and it can only accept two things down the pipe. Well, there they are, they come in, and then they can be used here and here. Okay, and we probably want to put the same line of code as the game ends. So let's put it down here just before the game over. Okay. Alright then, so let's run it and see it in action. I'm going to need to save it. So please enter your name. Graham. Would you like to play? Yes. 2 plus 3, 5. Would you like another go? Yes. Okay, so it said now Graham's score here, sponsored by Random Watches, and notice it's got these blank lines because we use the \n to force a new line in there, a blank line. Okay, so let's just see if it adds another one to the score, if we get another one right. So that's 3 plus 4 equals 7. Got it right again, so let's see what the score is now. See, the score's 2 now. And let's just prove that it doesn't add one on if we get it wrong. So 9 plus 4, let's just say 2. Have another go. And the score is still 2 because we got that one wrong. Let's do this one and then we'll exit. So 8 plus 3 is 11, and we don't want another go. And then we've gone to game over, but before that, again, we've got our line of code here. Now, in here we've got our score sponsored by Random Watches. Now, if this was something that we were using throughout this program and perhaps other programs, then every time our sponsor changed, we'd need to update all the programs to change the name of that sponsor. But if you keep things in a function, particularly ones that are managed outside of each program and used within them, we'll come to how to do that later, but it's just something to keep in mind. If you manage them within functions, then you could just change it here. So you could change it to Super Watches, and then we wouldn't need to change any of the other code because every time it printed out, it's just using what's in here. Okay, so we'll come and do a bit more about functions as time goes on, but I just wanted to show you really how they worked within our game here so that we get an idea of what we're going to be doing with them. Alright then, well, thanks for joining me, and I will see you on the next lesson. Goodbye.